Alrighty, y'all. Radio Tekkers live. We're doing something a little bit special today. It's a tier list. All Matt's idea. So Matt, I mean, you've got the floor here. I'll go ahead and hit the intro, and all hell will break loose. Alrighty, Radio Tekkers live. I'm Tanner, aka the Texas Gentleman, and right alongside me here, the magnificent one himself, Matt Willis. Matt, how are you doing today?
Kablam. Doing pretty well, thank you, Tanner. It feels dirty me doing that still, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, now that Mags is back, and he's not here with us today, of course, but he did make his return on the Chain Wrestling, which you can see here on the YouTube channel.
Indeed, and on Twitch, of course. You can
see on Twitch.
It's available tomorrow on 9 p.m. UK, and of course 3 p.m. Cowboy and 4 p.m. for people on the East Coast. But of course, that is for tomorrow, and of course, everyone should get checked out. Of course. Unfortunately, Dan Griffin's friend, UTT Rob, said never wanted to be in the Premier League anyway. It's rubbish. You are unfortunate, Rob. You are unfortunate. Playoff finals are like that sometimes. But what we're going to talk about now is the season that's just been and gone. Now, I've sometimes been accused of, when I've done the volley, as you can see by my background, that sometimes I can get on a bit about certain games. So to try and keep that down, try and keep a nice tight hour, let's say. But we'll aim for an hour. We'll see how it goes. We're going to go through the 20 teams in alphabetical order.
Ooh.
And yes, in alphabetical order. And you and me, Tanner, are going to rank the teams, the 20 teams, with an A to F grade for how their season went. Now, we can always change that as we're going along, but we are going to also let the chat contribute. If they think that we're wrong, put a case forward in the chat, and if we make it good enough, we'll change it. Absolutely. So you can change this
or not, or we'll say you're wrong, and that
likewise possible. So Tanner, you're watching the chat because I can't watch two things at the same time. Okay, so you're in charge of watching the chat, all right?
I mean, yeah, sure, fair enough. Hey, chat, how's it going?
Again, complicated. Has already popped in saying good afternoon. Afternoon to you, sir. Afternoon to you indeed. Right, so I'm going to bring up on the stream now. Here we go. There we go. That lovely tier list. Here we go. It's lovely. There, you've got all the teams. You've got all the teams down here, and as you can see, A at the top and F at the bottom. So Tanner,
yes,
let's start with the A's because that's the best place to start. Arsenal. A bit of a mixed bag of a season, really.
A little bit, and maybe one other thing too, Matt, that we should probably maybe lay some groundwork on here, in terms of grading, right? I guess what criteria are you looking for in terms of grading these teams as you go? Because I mean, for me, I'm going based off of what expectations should have been or would have been at the start of the season.
Expectations based off coming off last season as well. Because if they did have a really good season last year, but a crap year this year, that'd be massively taken into account as far as I'm concerned.
Right. So I mean, as far as Arsenal are concerned, because our Arsenal are the first team up, right?
Indeed.
See, I'm a bit conflicted on them for a number of reasons, because they were expected to do better. They invested a lot of money. They did fall short of the Champions League, but still made it into the Europa League.
They did.
So, uh, um,
Let's not forget, of
I mean,
course, that after I think it was 3 games, they were rock bottom of the league as
yes,
well.
that is
People,
very true.
the fans were calling for Arteta's head, and then Aaron Ramsdale went in goal, and things seemed to turn around.
Yeah,
I mean,
Ramsdale was a revelation to them.
absolutely.
You know, I
We
would even go as far as saying Granit Xhaka was a bit of a revelation to them as well. He had some really spot on performances when I saw him, and he really, honestly stepped up when Aubameyang left. A lot of players did, but I particularly noticed a shift with Granit Xhaka.
Yeah, unquestionably, the we ridiculed Arsenal for spending the money they spent on Ramsdale. We and rightly at the time we thought, well, he ain't worth 35 million.
Yeah, we didn't think it was a good move.
It,
I
it, it,
still don't know if 35 million is worth it.
I do think in a way they were laughing to the bank on the 35 million part, but unquestionably he is the Arsenal #1 goalkeeper now, unquestionably, and he certainly deserves half a mention for the World Cup squad when it comes round in another 4 or 5 months time.
Mm,
Because if we're still 5 months from a World Cup, it could still massively change that side of things.
hmm
But I just think that Arsenal, I mean, the best stats of the season, they finished fifth in the league, which if you'd given them that after 4 games, they'd have bit your hand off.
mm,
You know,
hmm
they lost 13 games and they won 22. They only drew 3 games all season. They didn't draw a lot of matches, but they did lose 13, which is more than any of the other teams in the top 6,
hmm
even Man United, and they still finish above them, comfortably above them.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Um, I guess when you boil it all down, for me,
Yeah,
they pushed far. I think Arsenal fans will be slightly disappointed that they did not break into the top four.
I think they will, especially given that it was in their hands with 3 games to go.
True. So that there is a little bit of heartbreak there. But at the same time, I feel strongly that they're on the right track, that Arsenal have done well enough, and that they've exceeded my expectations. I mean, I would say that they're a solid. I would say probably B tier. Yeah,
I'd
for
give a
me.
B as well because they didn't have. If they had a good cup run, I'd have said give them an A. But they
Yeah.
didn't have. They were in free. They were in the Europa League.
Uh huh.
They were in the they did well in the Europa League up until the knockout rounds, and they went out rather disappointingly. Um, and they didn't do well in the FA Cup. Didn't do well in the League Cup. In terms of what their standard is.
hmm
So I think a B is fair. I think
Yeah.
a B is fair. Right. Okay. So that's Arsenal. Now Aston Villa.
Yeah. Man, there was a lot of expectation for Villa to do well. I mean, they made some really good moves for Buendia, for Danny Ings. They sold Jack Grealish, so they are in a little bit of a rebuild kind of flux because, if you looked at the season before, everything was built around Jack Grealish, and now that their talisman is gone, they're kind of, up without a paddle, so to speak.
They
Um,
were in real trouble, and that's what got Dean Smith the sack. They were in real trouble. But Gerrard
mhm.
has done wonders with them since he took over. He's
Yes.
given them that grit and that steel. And let's face it, a couple of weeks ago, we were sat here this
hmm
time,
hmm
and we were commentating on the fact that Coutinho had just put them 2-0 up away at Man City.
Yeah.
So
Um,
they had the potential to upset teams on the day. I mean, they finished 14th, but is that a fair reflection given how badly their season started?
I think it is a bit disappointing. It's not a total failure. on all parts. But it's certainly disappointing, I would say. Now I think going into next season, I think the expectations will be higher because they've invested a lot more. They've brought in some quality players already this summer.
Coutinho
Um,
already as well. That was them
yeah,
before the season was over.
yeah, they completed
Great
the
bit of
Coutinho
business.
deal. They're bring and I think they've already signed two other players. So this is a good foundation for them. I think that Villa will be a little bit disappointed with their finishing result, but at the end of the day, I think it's about steady. So I would say this is probably D tier, or in my opinion, though.
I hear what you're saying,
Uh huh.
and yeah, I'm leaning more towards C, but I'll give you D for now.
Okay. Yeah,
I'll
fair
give you
enough.
D because I think that's a fair comment. I'm sure the chat will light up with that later on about us doing Villa dirty here. Um, the next pick we've got, of course, then would be the buzzing bees of Brentford, who of
Mm,
course were our team of the season on Tekkers, of course, because they won the playoff final, which
right,
means
right.
Forest will be next year, of course.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, right?
Do you know what? As someone who, when he started watching football back
Uh-huh.
in 1998, Nottingham Forest were in the Premier League. So for
Yeah.
me, it feels like it's gone full circle for me. So I quite like that.
Hey, fair
Um,
enough.
right. So Brentford, we're going to Brentford, of course.
Oh
Start of the
yeah.
season, they had a fire, smashed Arsenal 2-0 first day.
Yeah. Yeah, that was spectacular.
Hmm.
That what a way to start the Premier League. A newly promoted team facing off with Giants and Arsenal, and really taking them down. We really didn't feel a whole lot for Arsenal at the beginning of the season, granted, but
Hmm.
they kind of grew into expectations as time went on. Brentford, though, the tricky thing about Brentford is that, and we'll discuss this about Norwich as well, in particular, um, Norwich and Watford, I guess, more or less.
Yeah.
Um, there's always that expectation that one or two of those newly promoted teams are probably going to go right back down. And Brentford, for all of their smarts, they were really gutsy and really risk taking, and sometimes those gambles don't pay off. For them, they ended up mid table, which is a whole lot better than what many probably would have projected for them.
We sure
And
did.
yeah, and they did it on a pretty tight budget too,
Hmm.
right?
Which
Uh,
proves that you can be done, of course. I mean, they
yeah,
finished 11 points clear.
yeah, yeah, which
That's brilliant.
solid. Yeah, exactly. So for Brentford, I mean, I got to put that in a B tier for the Brentford Bees
I'm
myself.
I'm I'm fully on board with you on this one. I'm fully on board with you because Brentford have had a great season. They also the first team to take points of Liverpool this season as well,
They were
with that
they were
3-3
involved.
draw.
They were involved in some firefights this year.
They did.
A 3-3 draw with Liverpool. They could score freely when they had their day. So yeah, I would say yeah, Brentford certainly deserves to be in that B category for me this year.
Absolutely. If they'd have got a few, if they hadn't been a few other teams having exceptional seasons, then I would have put them in the A. But no, B Brentford be very happy with the B, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right, Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, at the start of
Hmm.
the season, a lot of people were thinking mid-table, lower mid-table.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up top half, but given that at the halfway point they were pushing in the European spots, and then
Yeah.
they were drawing game of the game of the game. I mean, then it was 15 draws, which was the joint most of the league.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like you pointed out, we started the season with Potter Mania, really, right?
Yeah,
Graham Potter was installed as this new
deity.
godlike figurehead, amongst English football supporters. I mean, there's still people who want him to be the next England national team manager. Um, Brighton, again, they surpassed expectations. They continue to play well under Graham Potter, but that tumble down the table towards the tail end of things, as you point out, with them drawing game after game after game, that really takes a hit in my book, Matt.
Yeah, I agree. Injuries to Lallana, and they just couldn't keep. I mean, Trossard had spells when he was good. Danny Welbeck, at times could score a worldie, but he can't stay fit either. Brighton have got a bitty summer ahead of them for sure. I think compared to where people thought they'd end up, a C for me. I mean, it could have been much better for them if they'd been in the play, in like the European spot, but it's about where we expected them, and better than expected in some cases. So I'll take a C.
Yeah, I'll take a C for could have been better. Yeah.
Yeah, could have been better, but could have been a lot worse. Which unfortunately leads us to the final B. Unfortunately, which is which of course is our good friend Mags, and of course Mr. Chris Harris. Their team, Burnley.
Oh man. Where
should we make it easy for them and just do that?
So I mean I am tempted to put Burnley in the F category because they got relegated. And,
they did. They also did put up some fight after Dyche was sacked.
I mean, they even put up some fight all through. I mean, basically 6 months of the season, right? Because they weren't doing terribly well, but they always stuck in and around just above that relegation spot. And it wasn't until they actually ended up sacking Dyche that they I mean they did pull out some good results after that, but I don't know, that seemed to really actually kick the ball rolling in the opposite direction of where they wanted it to be.
It did. I'm leaning towards. I don't want to give an F because it wasn't a complete failure, but I would. Well, maybe make it. So one would argue it is, but look at the table: 7 wins, 14 draws, 17 losses. Some of those games they could have turned those into wins on other days. Yeah. So for me, it's an E. They played well at times. They played some good football. In my opinion, they were unlucky to go down.
It will be interesting to see what will happen if Vincent Kompany is installed as their manager.
This is exciting times from all accounts. Yes, Vincent Kompany, if he comes in as the manager for Burnley, that would be huge, I think.
And I think that while they got relegated, and while that is your
my brother has gone. Yeah, so give me what? How about Tanner? We quickly check in with our friends over at TripSurfer.
Yes. Let's run a little quick commercial break while Matt checks the door. This broadcast of Radio Tekkers is brought to you in part by our partners over at TripSurfer Vacations. Yes, summer is here again, and we know that you're ready for a much-needed vacation. TripSurfer Vacations has great all-inclusive packages for your next beach vacation and all the info that you need to know about your next trip. So whether you're headed to Cancun, Cozumel, Cabo, or the Caribbean, TripSurfer Vacations has you covered. We even have partnerships for American and European adventures as well. You'll enjoy fine dining, a drink in hand, toes in the sand, and some much-needed R&R. We know you're ready to go, so it's simple. Visit TripSurferVacations.com and let them know that Radio Tekkers sent you. Again, that's TripSurferVacations.com. Y'all have fun out there. Yeah, Matt got back just in time there.
That is typical. But waiting for delivery all day. It turned up now.
Yeah. But yeah, visit TripSurferVacations.com to book your next resort vacation. Booking packages now through all of next year as well. So let us know when you're headed out, and let them know that Radio Tekkers sent you.
Absolutely. Look after you at TripSurferVacations.com.
Yeah.
Speaking of someone who was looked after well this year, or not looked after well, I suppose I should say in a way, Chelsea.
Oh man.
Where do we unpack this can of worms, Tanner? Should we start with the fiasco behind the scenes or what's on the pitch?
I mean, which fiasco behind the scenes do you want to talk about? There's a couple of them.
Indeed. So how about after you, sir?
So expectations were really high for Chelsea at the start of the season. I think that everybody, everybody and their mom, everybody at even Football Manager designed the wide center back option in game because of Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea side, who for all intents and purposes, basically reinvented the system and popularized it. And really made Chelsea look great. And obviously, they were European champions last year. They had a decent season, I guess, to close, especially considering that they spent over, what was it, over $200 million in transfers, and then another $100 million on just Romelu Lukaku alone this summer.
That went well, didn't it?
Yeah, expectations were certainly very high. There was a lot of people who put Chelsea above Manchester City to win the title this year. So,
well, let's not forget, of course, at Christmas, Chelsea were top of the table.
Yeah,
clear. They were 9 points clear.
They were.
And they also had buggered off to Qatar to take part in the Club World Cup as well, and won that. So World Club champions, it was all going swimmingly for them, and then all of a sudden January hit.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't just all roses either.
No.
There was Romelu Lukaku talking to Sky Sports Italia, saying that he was already missing Inter Milan, and I think there's already machinations in the work as we speak that Romelu Lukaku may in fact be headed back to Inter Milan this summer.
Very possible, of course.
It's hard to say what's going to happen here with them.
It is a bit, unfortunately. But they also had a relatively good season domestically, though. I mean, they did finish third in the league despite fees dropping off for them.
Yeah.
But they also ended up with 2 cup finals.
They did, both of which they lost on penalties. I mean, I think that if you even asked a Chelsea fan, I think they would say that they were pretty disappointed. They thought that this was going to be a new era for Chelsea, similar to how Mourinho led a new era for Chelsea. And that could certainly still be the case. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think this season was maybe a case of them taking 2 steps forward last year and now taking 1 step back a little bit.
A little bit, I would agree with you. And let's not forget as well that they were also put out in the Champions League quarter-final by Real Madrid.
Yeah,
Real Madrid, who rose from the ashes against
everybody.
Against
PSG.
They put PSG out. Then they put the top 3 of the Premier League out in consecutive games.
Yeah. I think for Chelsea, it's a case of they did well, but not well enough. They were always on the cusp of something as opposed to on the front foot of something.
Indeed.
So I don't know. I would say Chelsea would be a solid B tier for me. They did really, really good, but again, with the controversies, especially with the whole sale of the club,
which has now gone through, which is fantastic for Chelsea fans and for the people behind the scenes in Chelsea who are not oligarchs and are just trying to, not trying to buy their 15th Ferrari, but they're trying to pay their bills and get on with life. Like the tea woman, for example, and the kit man, and the people keeping the pitch intact.
Yeah. It's It's a tough one, man.
It's a tough one for sure. So I'm very happy to see that Chelsea have, the sales gone through and it's much better that side of things.
Mm.
And it could be better for sure, but
Yeah.
it also could be a lot worse. But let's not
Yeah.
forget as well, they also finished nine. They were 9 points clear at Christmas, and they finished 19 points off the top.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not to say, uh, that they're not a good team. They are a very, very good team.
Very good team, very good team.
I,
On their
I, I
yeah,
bitterly dislike Chelsea.
indeed.
But but they are a good
Put in the
team.
context, Tatner, of how good a
Yeah.
season they had.
Yeah. I would say
Um,
it's a solid B tier for
they took
Chelsea.
points off of Liverpool, which not a lot of teams did. Only eight, only 10 games Liverpool didn't get maximum points.
Yeah.
Man City 9 games, which is what did it in the end, of course, for Liverpool.
Hmm.
But if Chelsea had to be wound up because of what happened with Abramovich, Liverpool would have won the league because City beat Chelsea twice and Liverpool would have got draws.
True.
So Liverpool would have won the league because of that, but that was not the way that any Liverpool fan would have wanted to win the championship.
No.
Some might have done, but they're not fans. Well, we're going to move on now, Tanner, to the other C in the league, which was a team which at the start of the year, Patrick Vieira, what a fantastic season he's had based on what he had at the start of the year.
Yeah. I think that there was a lot of people who really didn't have much expectation for Crystal Palace. They always seem to be floating in and about that lower mid-table position.
Yes.
And sometimes they outperform that, right? Um, I will say that they did do better than expectations here. In my book, they even went all the way to the FA Cup semifinals, which is not no feat to be sneezed at.
Indeed. They were, according to one of the outlets online, Crystal Palace brushed aside by Chelsea. I'm like, Chelsea had to work bloody hard in that game. It wasn't a brushing over at all. They had to sign so many new players, a whole new team basically, get them
Mm.
playing his way of football,
Mm-hmm.
finish 12th in the league
Mm-hmm.
with a brand new team basically. Keep Zaha, I'd like to point out as well, keep him firing, keep him fit, and you managed to get to an FA Cup semi-final. It's a B for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a solid B season, and I think it sets a good foundation of more things to come for Crystal Palace. I'm sure.
Mm.
I think if they can keep up, the good recruiting that they've had, and keep up with, I guess, the direction that they're heading in as a club, I think that they are to do very well.
Down my first division, I'm going to drop Chelsea down one.
You're gonna drop Chelsea down to C.
I want to drop Chelsea down to C because I think that based on that, because they were 9 points clear, and they were the reigning European champions, this has been a disastrous season for them. So a C is good
You're
enough.
gonna catch the ire of a bunch of Chelsea fans by
Well,
slipping them from B to C.
we'll be glad and put it down a D then, won't they? Won't they? Really?
Oh,
You know,
okay.
if you got a problem with it, people out there, then you can always at me at MGB Graham.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So yeah, Palace definitely deserving where they are. Okay. Right. Mr. Ray Cash at the start of the season picked a football team. He says he's got blood from this neck of the woods.
Uh,
I think he's talking bullshit. The blue side of Merseyside, and this side lost more games than anyone apart from my bottom two.
oh yeah, and I mean
Comfortably more.
their finances were outed as being just absolutely
Inaccurate.
horrendous.
For
Yeah.
legal reasons, let's say inaccurate, Anna, yeah?
I mean, you can say it for legal reasons. I'll say it was near fraudulent. Uh,
I'm trying to keep us I'm trying to keep us out of the topic, Anna. But it certainly,
yeah,
they certainly let a lot of they certainly lent a lot of scope for discussion for
yeah.
sure. Yes.
Dan Griffin has the right thought. F for fraudulent for Everton.
But in general, the amount of money they had spent, they brought in Rafa Benitez, which went down like a lead balloon,
Mm,
and then they brought in um, Frank Lampard, who couldn't win at Chelsea with all the money behind it.
mm,
And then you throw into the mix as well that they started cartwheeling down the league. As a Liverpool fan, I was sort of torn because I want them to go down because they're our arch rivals, but you want to play the derby for the rivalry as well.
mm,
So you sort of get that thing of, do you want them to go down? Do you want them to stay up, sort of thing? They saved themselves in the end with a game to go.
mm-hmm.
Just as well, really, because if they'd have had to rely on the game against Arsenal, they got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah. This is I've heard mixed things from Everton fans. One in that, obviously, they were very poor. They were very poor for a lot of the season, right?
Yes.
I don't think there's going to be anybody who's going to argue against that. Um, on the other hand, and this definitely it does not have any impact on what the table standings are going to be here when we grade them. But I've heard a lot of fans also say that it made them feel alive, right? It gave the Everton fans something to rally behind because there is that expectation. Everton's supposed to finish mid-table all the time, right? Or be just in touching distance of European spots.
I'm
Here,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
yeah,
sorry. They're meant to finish in mid-table. It's like that. They spend more
yeah,
than anyone else in the league over the last 5 years than anyone except for Man City
yeah, yeah,
and Chelsea
yeah. And mostly
and Man United probably as well.
mostly poor spending.
Yeah. Well, the thing they brought in James Rodriguez, who we wonderfully call Helen, who's called Helen on the show, of course.
Yes.
Obviously bought him for big money, released on a
Mm-hmm.
free transfer, and then
Mm-hmm.
went over to Qatar, sat on a bench, didn't do nothing at all. And then you get other big the amount of money they spent on other players, and just the business sense they had in general. They sold Luca Digne, yeah, to
Uh huh.
Chelsea to Aston Villa,
Uh huh.
which I thought was a good bit of business because Luca Digne is a very good left back, very good left back. And then they sent um, El Ghazi on loan to Everton in exchange.
Yeah, they
El
did.
Ghazi is a decent player. They sent him on loan and didn't play him.
Yeah. Everton were very very poor all season. They barely escaped relegation. Um, I mean, like what do you want to say? They just did
That's done.
not do
It's
very
done.
well.
It's done. It's done.
Yeah, they just
It's done for
weren't a
sure.
good club this year. But
And as Dan Griffin in the chat has just said there, 40 million on Iwobi. Arsenal
yeah,
must have been laughing to the bank on that one.
yeah. I mean, Arsenal went and spent that money. Okay, I guess like they
They've had
reinvested it all right.
Everton had one shining light this season. The one shining light they had
Uh,
was Gordon
yeah. They have had
coming
some
through.
revelations. Hmm.
He came through their ranks and he at times was good. There was also times when he simulated for penalties, and referee quite rightly at times booked him for it.
A few times. Yeah.
Reminds me of Gareth Bale, who was booked 5 times in one season, all for simulation.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saying, yeah, Everton's one shot light was without a doubt Gordon. The only reason I mean, let's face it, they should have been so much higher, regardless. Okay, the player they've got, the money they spent, they should have been much, much higher.
Yeah. No argument here. They Everton were very poor. They were very poor.
And
This season.
in that vein of thought, Tanner, let's go to a team which just finished below them,
Uh,
and at relegation phase as well, Leeds United.
um, uh, Leeds were. Oh man, they were they were arguably worse than Everton. In some regards, not in the financial aspect necessarily, but I think injuries really hurt them, and the fact
Yeah,
that Bielsa could not adjust the ship um, to make a difference. He felt tactically inflexible,
he
and
did,
that made a really big difference.
and of course they sacked him.
They did sack him for probably a manager not above Bielsa's station. um,
And yet he did get them. He did get the job done. He did. His job was to keep them in the
he
Premier
kept them
League.
up. Yeah, he kept them up. Jesse March did, and I'd be interested to see how Leeds build on that. Um, Obviously, they're gonna make a little bit of money, which is never a bad thing.
Indeed,
Um, and we'll kind of see where things go from there. But um,
indeed.
uh,
What's the chat saying to Hannah on this one? Because I can't see
yeah.
that at the moment. I'm trying to decide. I can't decide if they should be an E or an F.
Dan believes that we should rank Leeds higher than Everton for the injuries and lack of investment, whereas his UTT Wrestling tag team partner UTT Rob says that Leeds were awful, only stayed up with a miracle on the last day. Um,
Absolutely.
both are correct answers, I think. Rob obviously wanted Leeds to
Yeah.
um, he wanted them to be graded an F earlier in the chat. I don't know if they are
Yeah.
quite F worthy. They should have been. Um, I would maybe put them at an E.
I
Um,
think an E is fair. Yes.
mhm.
I think an E is fair because it was between them and Burnley who was going to go down. So I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair. Um, Again, the chat, if you think maybe they should be lower, I'm happy to listen to that as well. Um, so how have we done so far, Tanner? We've done 3, 5, one more. Okay, so after this, we'll have a quick check through the chat and see what people had to say. In case we missed anything. Leicester.
Oh man. Again, this feels like really below expectations.
I
Leicester.
agree.
Um, Leicester have a really good group of players. They've been around together now at least a few seasons. Feels like they should have gelled, and they really didn't perform to their station. They did have a little bit of fun in Europe. They missed out on. I guess they still well no they missed out on the Conference League if I'm not mistaken.
The
Um,
Conference League semi-final they got to, and
mm-hmm.
narrowly missed avoid getting to the final. Um,
Yeah,
that's you can argue that it's a terrible leaders fit. Roma won it.
yeah. Well,
Roma won it.
Roma's a good.
It's not like it's a team like with all respect, of
Careful,
course.
careful.
It's not like
Roma's a good team. Rome.
it's not like it was a team who have never been in Europe before. It was their first ever time into it, sort of thing,
Mm-hmm,
and they got through with luck and prayers and whispers.
mm-hmm,
They
mm-hmm.
Roma are a decent outfit, and it gives credibility to the league. But the teams that were in the final four were credible, and if you make into the Conference League, it's a competition worth winning because you need to get into Europa League from that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how you get up the pyramid. That's the whole idea about it. Yes, it's more football, but it is what it is. Obviously, not to forget, of course, that the Europa League and the Conference League will be taking the same change the Champions League takes in a couple of years' time.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be having the same thing in them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where they had an injury hit season for sure, but and they did make the Champions League. The Conference League semi final. Uh, Despite that, though, Tanner, I think a D.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at D, maybe even C if you want to be a bit generous to Leicester, because again, some of these
No,
injuries are not
no.
okay. All right. Well,
I don't want to be, but I can. I'm thinking about it more.
yeah.
It is C or a D for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I would say C or a D. I mean, again, they did make the Conference League semifinals, or is it the quarterfinals?
Semi-final. You convinced me.
Yeah.
You've convinced me. Semi-finals.
Yeah, I
You've
mean
convinced
they
me.
did good. They still finished top half, but they, as Dan pointed in the chat, injuries and just inconsistency led to their downfall.
They're also.
Dan's actually saying D, so I don't think that you would be
I
wrong
thought
to
in the
put.
right. I'm in the right area for sure. So me saying that's a good thing for sure. See, Leicester just don't for me. Just
Mm,
they expected better.
mm, mm,
They,
mm.
they they expected better, and they're still relying on Jamie Vardy,
Yeah, that's gonna be a really big problem.
who played for him in League Two, in League One.
Yeah, that's gonna be a really
Don't,
big problem. They're gonna have to figure out what to do post Jamie Vardy because they've
because
already told
he's
us that they don't.
35, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean they've already told us that they don't 100% trust Patson Daka. He didn't start anywhere near the number of games that he should have.
Mag's on a plane right now to Leicester to complain. That's
Yeah,
why he's not here. He's on a train to Leicester right now to complain
yeah.
to
Mags is
Brendan
sending a
Rodgers.
formal complaint to
Absolutely,
Leicester. Mm,
absolutely. Patson Daka is a great striker. He should, and when he played, he was involved and got
yeah.
goals. So yeah. Um, so we so C/D is thereabouts for sure. What is the chat saying in regards to what we've said so far, then, Tanner? Is everyone happy? Any more comments about clubs we've missed?
If well, Rob says if Leicester hadn't won the league a few years ago, they'd be at least a C this season. Um, yeah, I would say that's about accurate. Um,
It is,
mhm.
unfortunately. Anything about Everton in there?
Nothing about Everton. I think we're spot on for Everton. Um, Dan did agree with us that E was fine for Leeds. So, yeah.
Oh, Dan Griffin also did say that Danny van der Beek brought him on loan, barely played him.
Mm,
Absolutely. When he did play, he scored, usually.
yeah. Yeah.
Didn't play him at all. Why bother bringing him in then? You loaned in Donny van der Beek and bought Deli Ali.
Yeah.
And Deli Ali didn't play. And nor did Donny van der Beek. So what was the point of signing him?
Well, Deli Ali did play a little bit, and he contributed to them surviving. But I don't know, man. Seems like money could have been better spent elsewhere.
The thing is that how long can they keep trading on the fact that Leicester City were Premier League champions? We're talking 6 years ago.
Yeah.
How can they keep trading on that for? But they are Damari Gray was a decent investment for a bargain. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Right, Tanner, we're heading towards some of the heavy hitters now.
Yeah. Some big heavy hitters, and I think we're starting off here with your favorite in mind.
It is, and
Yeah.
we apologise for the slight bias that may come out in our voices here. Liverpool, we've said it a few times this year, played every game that was available to them
Mm.
for this season.
Mm-hmm.
Made 3 cup finals, won 2 of them, finished run-up in league by a point, despite being at one point
Mm-hmm.
19 points behind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you put him anywhere other than A, then you are smoking something.
Well, even if you were smoking something, I think you would probably put them at an A because they were just so good. Um, here's one way to think about it, and I've seen a lot of not to call anybody out in particular, but I've seen a lot of City fans and a lot of Chelsea fans on Twitter, where Twitter's the capital of complaining. But seen a lot of fans online, particularly, say things like, "Why is Jurgen Klopp winning Manager of the Season? Liverpool are quite overrated." Blah blah blah. One thing that you have to keep in mind is projected points from the beginning of the season for Liverpool was quite low. A lot of people had them finishing fourth or even outside of the top four, just because of on what basis it was that
Last season was
Liverpool.
not good for Liverpool for sure.
Yeah, they're judging that based off of last season, and I think they outperformed last season incredibly.
Absolutely.
Um,
Even with all the injuries they suffered to crucial players, they still finished third.
they still finished third. Um, I I think that at the end of the day, I think what we've witnessed this season, in all likelihood, is very reminiscent of actually the Chicago Bulls' last dance for Liverpool. Not, Sadio Mane likely headed out the door. Mohamed Salah, his contract situation is still unclear. So there's not a whole lot of certainties for this Liverpool team right now. What is certain is that they will go again. They will rebuild and build on the successes of this season, and do it in a way that's often come across as very smart and very intelligent.
Hmm.
Again, as you pointed out, they lost the league by 1 point. They lost the Champions League by 1 goal. They still won the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup on penalties, nonetheless. Um, yeah, I think that you have to put Liverpool in an A tier for me.
Yeah. It's slightly annoying as a Liverpool fan to look at the table and see it's exactly the same in terms of points as it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, I could see why you would say that.
It's
Um,
annoying that it's exactly the same points total, and how you can be the scored the most amount of points for a second place team twice.
I think that
It just hurts a bit.
what one thing that I mean, if you have to critique Liverpool on something on anything, they draw way too many games to be, to be competing with, Man City for the title. And still they push really high up towards it. City actually lost more games than Liverpool this year, but because Liverpool drew a lot more, they drew both games against
They
Chelsea.
they drew two more. They drew two more and lost one less.
Yes, they drew two. They drew twice against City, twice against Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken, and then
Indeed.
they also drew against Brentford, and they lost against West Ham. Um,
Yeah. And the thing is, people can point to like that for a legal loss, that was legal loss. And don't forget, of course, that City had to win the games as well. So
yeah,
which is where we go to next, of course. And we mentioned, of course, to have a title fight, you got our title contenders. Never going to Man City. They won the Premier League title, so it's an A for them. But
yeah,
they
yeah.
also choked in the Champions League semi-final. They
I
had
mean,
the final in their hands.
I feel like if you can, if even if you go to a final in the Champions League, if you can make it to the semifinals or even the quarterfinals the following year, you're still in it amongst the best teams in Europe.
I agree.
Um,
Thing
uh,
is, are City fans disappointed with
I
because I'm going to say something which is going to sound sacrilegious here. We only won the league.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why you would ask and pose the question that
Mm.
way. But let's not forget how the City fans celebrated when they won the league title. I feel
By
like
destroying
this,
their home.
well, essentially. I feel like this title meant more to them than the ones that they have in previous years because for whatever I guess, part and because Pep Guardiola, I guess, created this narrative that their backs were against the wall and that the whole country was against them, and all of this has been largely untrue. Um, but
Largely untrue, yes.
but
Largely
they
untrue.
they they've certainly um, gave it a really good go, and I think that's all you can really ask for them.
Well, yeah, I guess so. They did win the league title by a point. Let's not forget they were 19 clear.
Yeah,
So just saying, they were 19 clear, every one clear. So they did drop points enough for Liverpool and others to close the gap, even though only Liverpool are the only team to do so.
Yeah.
Um, right, so we're going to talk about the top two. We've done that a lot this season. Let's move on to the other side of Manchester. How far down do we put Manchester United?
I don't think you can put them too far down, but boy, they were just embarrassing.
It was not good. It started so well as well.
They started well. Um, a lot of those moves that we viewed as them being, of them starting well, really
Yeah,
did backfire.
it did.
They
I
finally,
mean, Pogba, but the first game of the season, for example, 4 assists for all 4 goals. We thought, okay, maybe Pogba's finally turning things up. Maybe he's finally going to turn up. Ronaldo comes back to the club. They bring in Jadon
Mhm.
Sancho. They've been chasing for what feels like forever.
Yeah.
They make these amazingly good signings. You think, okay, Ronaldo for 10 million, give or take, as a token fee to get him keep away from City as well.
Yeah.
They take the shirt from Cavani and give him the shirt which used to belong to Forlan. And I'm like, the players throughout this squad is oozing talent. It oozes talent. And
Yeah,
then
it's a very
and then
talented squad, but they were largely rudderless.
and that's the
Um, but
problem.
you had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who is, I mean, he led them to second place last season. But with that being said, they reloaded, they reinvested. It looked like they were heading in a whole nother direction to the upper tier of English football.
Well, yeah, we
And
finished second and they want to go. That's up.
they lost in a very embarrassing fashion to Liverpool. They lost in a very embarrassing fashion to City, and over the course of the season, Harry Kane, what not Harry Kane, but Harry Maguire rather, Freudian slip there. Sorry.
We'll get to him
What
later. Don't worry about that.
he was found to be more and more embarrassing. As the season went on, he was totally found out, and by the time that Ralph Rangnick came in to try and steady the ship, he found out that he was not staying. He was not going to be staying at the job. He's not going to be a consultant. He's going to take the Austria job full time, and that's that basically made his appointment completely pointless. Um, so from top to bottom, United are a poorly run club. I would have to put them probably in the D category.
I think that's generous personally, but
Yeah, I mean they
I would
still
agree.
finished in a European spot.
They did, but let's face it, if it hadn't West Ham tanking it against Brighton, they'd been in the Conference League. So, Graham from Google Backup is saying, quick stop in the thank us for the content this year. Can't believe that we're doing this while Ukraine Wales game is on, though. Yeah, but we haven't got access to it in the United Kingdom, Graham, because you have to pay for that game in the UK.
I am watching it currently.
Yeah, but I do believe that Wales are ahead 1-0. We had
Yeah.
Yarmolenko own goal. So we will let you know as things go on. It's half time currently.
Hmm.
So yeah, aside from that, right. So Man United, I think, are lucky to be in D. But I just want to quickly touch
Well,
on Man City again slightly, Tanner, because I have something I
mhm.
forgot to mention. Is we mentioned earlier they spent 100 million on Jack Grealish.
Yeah, and his stats are not
Good.
they're not out of this world. At least not the basic most intrinsic stats that people normally look at. His goals and assists are not great.
They're not.
Um, what he is good at is all of the build up towards those metrics. Um, so I guess it does depend on how you want to read that. Um,
Well, I could read it like this, Tanner.
okay.
He did fuck all for the season and then celebrate like he done all the work himself.
Yeah, you could definitely say that.
let's not
Um,
forget as well. I'm just going to throw that, and it doesn't affect Man City's rating. Man City is saying an A, don't worry. But he also said that he'd never ever leave his hometown club.
I mean, but this is are we passing judgment on City here, or are we passing judgment on Jack Grealish?
Grealish, absolutely. But I just thought I'd mention it in passing. That's
Yeah,
all.
no, that's fair. Um, I
Okay,
don't
but
think Jack Grealish was an
I think
amazing
he,
signing, but I think that
I think he was a two-faced Judas, and it's come at the bottom. In fact, yeah, he's got the money, he got a Premier League title, but the fact is that what did he do to contribute towards it?
yeah. I'm willing to keep for the jury to be out until Haaland comes in, and then pass judgment on him.
Haaland is
Grealish.
half the price.
Haaland is half the price of Jack Grealish.
What does that tell you?
But Matt, I guess what
Erling
I'm trying to say
Haaland
is
is
that
yeah.
Erling Haaland needs somebody like Jack Grealish around him.
Would make him look better, or
Well, to contribute to how Haaland scores
but
goals
Grealish hasn't contributed to anything this year.
because he doesn't have a target man.
They had one, and didn't play him.
Who?
They had Jesus. They could have played. They could have actually.
Jesus is not a target man.
They could have.
Jesus is a winger turned central striker
they
on
well
his
they
best day. They
well
don't have a recognized striker.
if that's fine. In that case, you want to use that argument. That's fine. But let's also not forget that Grealish was brought in to do a job, and he didn't do that job this year. For me, I think that he personally needs to stand up and look at himself, because the fact matter is Erling Haaland, one of the deadliest strikers on the planet at the moment, has been signed for half the value he was, and I think that it won't matter how bad the numbers are for Haaland comparatively.
Right, but we're not here to pass judgment on Jack Grealish. We're here to pass judgment on Manchester City.
Absolutely, and Man City will stay in A because they did win the Premier League.
Yeah.
But I will say, we will, because we've been talking about transfers throughout the summer. We're going to do that in the summer, though. For right now, though, let's move on to the hot potato that is Newcastle United.
This one's really interesting.
It is for a multitude of reasons.
So, I guess had you asked me back in December, I probably would have graded them, an F or close to an F because of the expectations. I would have definitely thought that they would have gotten relegated. But under Eddie Howe's stewardship, they made a lot of really good decisions. They went to the market. They got the right players. They didn't go out and splash cash on stars necessarily, but they did bring Bruno Guimaraes. They did also move their what is that gentleman's name? This who was the striker for them for a while? The Brazilian gentleman.
Say Maxwell?
No, he's French.
I'm trying to think of what you do talk about, sir.
Let me see here. I've got football.
Because they did bring in they also bring Chris Wood, of course, as well, and they overpaid for Chris Wood, but he was a good signing. They also brought in Matty Target from Aston on loan. That was a good signing. They brought in Kieran Trippier as well from Atletico Madrid. Don't forget that one.
They did.
Kieran and that was a good signing.
Was a good signing. Mm-hmm. I would agree with you on that.
He also got injured as well in there, but even when he was injured, he was still in the dressing room trying to motivate his teammates, and that's the sort of player you want in your team.
Yeah. They went and did a lot better. They did a lot better.
Based on where we thought they would do at the start of the season, them finishing 11th, and I'd like to point out that they only finished 7 points off of Europe.
Yeah, they came really close. And especially to go from being in a relegation spot. Bottom, yeah. To, being a lot closer. to where they want to be. I mean, you can't fault them at all for that.
Hmm. We're
Um,
not we're not addressing
mhm.
because our personal opinions about the
Oh, Joelinton, that's who I
Joe,
was thinking
Joe
of.
Linton. He's still there, but yeah,
Joelinton, he transformed into a fantastic central
winger.
midfield player.
Yeah, winger at times as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
So yeah, I apologize about that. I was thinking about a player they moved on. Sorry, not changed on. So I apologize about that. That's my fault.
No.
Newcastle, because we're not addressing the fact that owned by the Saudis, because that is not an opinion we have. We don't. Our opinion doesn't matter. That we are based this on the performances they have done and what we expected. We expected them to get relegated. They didn't. They finished mid-table. I'd give them a C.
Yeah, I would say a C is pretty good. I mean, you could even argue that they could go into the B tier just because of how they outperformed the
Okay, justify it.
expectations.
Justify the B.
They completely outperformed their expectations. Now, again, we could certainly say that this is down to the buyout, that they've got all the Saudi money. We could talk about sports washing, and this would be a whole nother 2-hour conversation. But
There's a conversation for the podcast for sure.
yeah, I mean, but I think that the argument could be there that if you wanted to say Newcastle United deserved to be in the B tier, you could certainly make that argument.
Absolutely. Okay, so Newcastle being in C. Now let's switch down to let's go to the Norfolk coast and go to Norwich.
Um, F.
Yeah. I as someone who was very happy to see Norwich City go, I hate Norwich. I really don't like Norwich.
They're not a very good team.
And the stats reflect that. 38 games in the league, of course. They won five. They
Mhm.
won five. They lost 26, which wasn't the most in the league, I'd like to point out. But their goal difference was, without looking down, I guess,
Minus 76.
ooh, 61.
Wow.
Not a million miles away. Terrible, terrible season. They made terrible choices in terms of signings. They brought in Ozan Kabak, who was at Liverpool on loan last year. They brought him in. He
Yeah.
was completely out of his depth.
Yeah, I guess they didn't watch Liverpool last season when they
No,
brought him in.
Kabak was okay, but didn't set the world on fire. And then they brought in Billy Gilmore from Chelsea.
Yeah.
Now he had the potential to, even if they go down, to set the world on fire, sort of thing. Like he's still giving everything he's got, sort of thing. Billy Gilmore going back to Chelsea. Is he
Hmm.
likely to get a starting spot based on what he did at Norwich?
Probably not.
No,
I don't think he fits into Thomas Tuchel's tactical stylings anyway.
I can see him being sold this summer.
I think that that's probably. I think that that's possible.
Mm.
Uh huh.
Yeah, Norwich had a horrendous season,
Hmm.
and they came up and they went back down again. We said they would. Uh, F for Norwich. Absolutely simple. Less simple is Southampton.
Mm. Um, they still don't have it. If that makes sense, they still don't
I
have.
know what you mean. Yeah, they blow hot and cold so much.
Now they do have new ownership,
They do.
which could make a difference going into next season. But we didn't really see a whole lot of glimpses of what that could mean. It
No,
was kind of like the reverse Newcastle. Newcastle's owners came in and just splashed the cash and really made a statement, whereas Southampton's were quite reserved and didn't
indeed,
really give you a whole lot of sense as to where they're going. Now they did make some smart signings, um,
they did.
but I don't know. They were. You could argue that they didn't like things didn't go their way all the time. They did produce some surprises here and there, but
I did expect more from them for sure, though. For
yeah,
sure.
that's fair.
We did see James Ward-Prowse hit. He's now scored the most free kicks of anyone in the Premier League era.
Mm.
which is a stat in itself, which is brilliant. I think
Hmm.
it's fantastic, and that sort of stat how's like more England games, but it's because either they're ball specialists, he's not considered in the same league as your players such as your Declan Rice's, Mason Mount, etc.
Hmm.
But if he can score that many free kicks, put him on a plane, bring him on, sort of thing.
Hmm.
Can't hurt sometimes. But for me, he's good for penalties as well. For me, a D, I think, because I was expecting more from them.
Yeah, that's not that's not unkind. I think that's probably about where you'd want to have them. They could have done better, arguably should have done better, but I don't think that they are at their current capacity, unless something radical changes.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you can see them above the station that they're at currently. So
I don't think as they are currently. I do think that Huttle has the core of a good squad.
mm,
Just need a couple more just to like spark them into life.
mhm, mhm,
Right, so the next team is Tottenham Hotspur, who changed managers this season, of course, mid-season. They brought in Nuno
mm.
from obviously after he left Wolves, and it didn't go great for him. Although they did beat Man City at the start of the season, first game we covered it on Tekkers.
Yeah. They also had a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde performance this year, which is interesting. Even when they've got under Nuno. Nuno again, he had that really good outing for Spurs against Manchester City at the top of the season.
Without Harry Kane, I'd point out as well for the start of the year, no Harry Kane from either. He was not in the right frame of mind, they said,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so he didn't turn out for City or for Spurs, and then they decided to sign Jack Grealish instead of Harry Kane. I'm not sure. I think Kane might have been a better signing for them, but it is what it is regarding what City did and didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Kane knuckled down and renewed his partnership with Son, who turned into be what a breakout star, won the Golden Boot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Spurs. Um. And again, they had some great results throughout the season, right? Obviously the draw at Anfield was going to mean a lot to them. I think they also drew at the London Stadium. Um,
But they're the only team to beat Man City home and away
they,
this year.
they they did do the double over City, which is
No one
good.
else, exactly. No one else did
Mhm.
that, which is
Um,
very impressive.
there were times where Antonio Conte was incredibly frustrated with the time with the team, though.
And he
So
was vocal about that, and I like that.
yeah,
And
um,
he also was very clever. He brought in Bentancur, and he brought in Kulusevski on an 18-month loan.
yeah, I think that's
That's
really what
genius.
sparked them. Is getting those two deals over the line. Um, I would say Spurs. You could probably put them as a solid B tier for me.
And they're a B for
Um,
me. Absolutely, they're a B.
hmm
It's been a while since we put someone, apart from Liverpool and Man City, anywhere above a C. So I
Yeah,
just noticed that we're going to go from C to T. It's been a while since we had a team that was performing above expectations because they've not been in the Champions League for 6 years.
mm,
So they'll be very happy not only to be back in the Champions League, but they got there ahead of Arsenal.
hmm
They'll be very happy about that because they beat Arsenal convincingly a couple of games ago and put it in their own hands. And of course, when a wallop Norwich 5-0, where Son got his goals to win on to share the golden boot, I should say, with Mo Salah.
yeah.
Um, Watford,
F.
yes, and we'll explain
Uh,
why. We'll explain why. This is one of the easiest ones to do again.
it's just
Three managers in the
yeah.
season.
Like what? Why? Like it's completely unnecessary to go through three managers in a season.
It is.
That to me says more about ownership than anything else. Is that is going through three managers in one season. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see who is going to be long term the manager of Watford. I say long term because you we mentioned before you don't buy, you rent when you're appointed Watford manager. Um, yeah, I mean they started obviously at the start of the year. It was so long ago. Who started the season as Watford manager? Tanner?
Um. Oh, geez. I did a whole video on him too.
This is not being disrespectful to Watford. This is just the fact of we're struggling to remember who it was.
Watford.
I feel terrible. I feel terrible. I can't remember who it is. I'm referring to my notes here. It was Cisco.
Cisco. Yeah, that sounds right.
Cisco. Cisco, who was in charge for 10 months, which is almost a record.
Yeah, it was Gisco Munoz, and then Claudio Ranieri took over in October, but then was sacked
In
in
January, yes.
January, only to be taken over by Roy Hodgson, who I guess saw out the remainder of the season. With
He quit as soon as they were relegated,
right, he saw out the remainder of the season.
and then Rob Edwards took over as head coach until the end of the season for
Oh,
2
okay.
games. So technically, they had 4 full-time managers,
That's crazy. That's way.
and that, Watford fans, is why you are ranked F.
Yeah.
I sorry to say that, unfortunately. Right, we've got 2 teams to go now, and we're going to start with West Ham United.
West Ham, they actually had a pretty good season. I'm
They
not
had
gonna
a they had
lie.
a they had a great season, and they finished 7th, which is lower than they finished last year, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, amount of West Ham fans this year who said we're not gonna we'll finish mid-table, we'll finish like bottom half sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll crash out in the group stages of the Europa League sort of thing. It's gonna be terrible. Now all the teams are back to normal now. We've got fans back in. We're gonna we're gonna struggle. I think they achieved above expectations because up until the last game of the season, were fighting for the Champions League at one point. Then
Mm-hmm.
spots they were fighting for the Europa League spots until the last game of the season. They were 2 goals away from the Europa League final
Mm-hmm.
until Aaron Creswell had a meltdown in Europe, which is reason. So that takes away from him, not the club. The club um, did very well. They lose a little credibility for the way they were Kurt Zuma off the pitch, although they did fine him £250,000,
Yeah.
which so they do give a little bit more for that side of things, and they dealt with things professionally. I feel some people criticize, but I won't. Um, I personally believe, and Tanner, it may sound weird, but I'm putting them there.
Um. I don't know about that.
They made the Europa League semi final
Yeah.
in their first year back in Europe
Yeah.
in 20 years, maybe longer.
But they didn't win it,
They
and they
didn't win it,
and
no, but they
and
also
they also finished seventh.
they finished 7th, which is still in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and but they were up
Um.
against teams now who were back at full strength. Liverpool at full strength, were a full team, and they beat Liverpool.
They finished the season loss, win, draw, loss. I get why you would want to try and put them into the A category, but
I'll settle for B.
we can't just put them right alongside the two teams that really pushed for it and broke away from the rest of the pack. I mean, I would say B. C would be really harsh, but I would say
I think
B.
C's harsh. I mean, I want A. You think C would be harsh? I think in that case, then B is the favoured number.
I think so.
So yeah, West Ham. I think they'd be pleased with the season they had. They got back into Europe, which is the main thing. And as we said earlier, the Conference League is not the disaster people thought it was going to be. It turned out to be really good football.
Yeah.
at times. Right, so the last team to put in there, just because of alphabetical order, is Wolverhampton Wanderers. They finished 10th, Tanner.
Yeah. Literally right in the middle of the pack. um, Wolverhampton. I think they did better than what a lot of people think they would. They haven't recovered all the way forward. And they still have the project that they're going through where they're wanting to have the um uh the I guess the Portuguese national team basically playing for Wolverhampton.
A little bit
Um
harsh, but yeah.
um but I mean they still have an ongoing project here. I think that they're going to have to make some changes for sure. But uh, uh, see.
Mm, I think a C is fair. I mean they were flirting with the positions at the top of the table,
Mm-hmm.
towards the top of the table early on, but yeah, I think that's a fair place to put them. They could have been higher. Arguably should have been higher. Um, in the table because
Mm-hmm.
they were putting off results on a regular basis. I've proven that at the end of the year, they were up against Liverpool within 2 minutes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so they were able, more than capable of mixing it the big boys for
Mm-hmm.
sure. There were times where they went missing in action, but sometimes when they play, sometimes they were unplayable. They replaced Rui Patricio with Jose Sarr very well. Had a good season. Ruben Neves, when he was fit, was brilliant as well. Um, the emergence of Huang was also gives reason to be optimistic for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and the manager did a good job. New manager, of course, did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
they did fine. I think they did fine.
I think that looking at that Tanner, how it is, that is fair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got the top two in the top spot, and I don't think any side can be massively unhappy where we put them.
No, I think that you know this is a pretty solid group here.
Is there any that you think maybe we've been a bit too generous with, or a bit harsh with, perhaps?
I mean, the only other one that I could think of is maybe I mean, you could make the case for Chelsea into B, but I think that C is probably
I don't
about
think so.
right.
I'm leaning more towards Leicester being lower or Villa being higher.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good indicator that we probably got it about right. In our case, at
Mhm.
least. And if you disagree with us, please make your case in the comments. We want to hear from you and see,
Absolutely, or
what
tweet
you
us
think.
directly at Radio Tekkers on Twitter. We'd be happy to take your opinions under advisement for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the tier list of the Premier League 21-22 season. I
Mm-hmm.
think that we will obviously we will take that and we will tweet that out from the Twitter later on so everyone can know that is what we officially have gone with. Right, so I enjoyed that, Tanner.
What's that?
I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed that as well. It was a lot of fun. Got to grade the Premier League and got to recap it a little bit. That was fun.
Absolutely. Conor Cave says saying Matt really hates Jack Grealish. What I'm getting here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hate's a strong word, but yeah, yeah. Um, it is very much a case of the season being now over. Um, we quickly mention, of course, we should probably mention, of course, that the fantasy football thing at the start of the season, Tanner, has come to a head, of course, as well. And his lordship, Ben Viney, for his lordship, he has won
Ah.
comfortably.
Ah. Okay.
He has won comfortably. I was second, and you were third.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that's
that's fine. That's fine, of course.
yeah.
His lordship
I
did great.
really only checked it through about September, so I'm not surprised.
Well, you're gonna have to check it more next year, Tanner, because next season, the whole Tekkers team's taking part.
I know lots of pressure. Lots of pressure.
A whole
Indeed.
Tekkers team taking part, and it's going to be quick fire like it was last year. It's going to be like boom, 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 boom. It's going to be intense. It's going to be exciting, and it'll be covered live on Tekkers. How could it go wrong? How could it go wrong? I'm
Many
sure.
ways.
Many
But
ways, many ways. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for watching along with us. And if you want to demand, then thank you. Hey, it's been great to have you along. Do not forget, of course, to follow us all over on Twitter, of course, and follow, of course, his lordship, as you can see at the bottom there. Follow him on the TikTok thing, and obviously at Podfather Mags. Tanner.
yes.
I think it is time maybe for us to give our own socials before we get out of here.
Yeah, indeed. You can follow me on Twitter over at Texas Gentleman _. Or you can follow the whole Tekkers team over at Radio Tekkers. That's RadioTekkers. Matt, where can the people find you?
So you can find me at matt.uk. You can find me on a variety of stuff here on Tekkers and also over on Physical Media. And of course, follow the Volley on Twitter at the Volley Live. That may change given we are going to a pre-recorded format in the off season, but we'll let you know. Tanner, as always, a pleasure and a privilege, sir.
You as well, Matt.
Right, on behalf of all the Tekkers, to nick a very tired phrase, the Premier League season, the fingers all over. It is now.